everybody! So there's a tool that I think is super underutilized when it comes to accessibility, and that tool is Braille. Now, before you jump off this video and think it's not relevant to you, let me just explain to you why it might be relevant to you. So while you might not be a person who directly uses Braille on a daily basis, we need stakeholders who can really understand the importance of Braille literacy and finding unique ways to incorporate Braille so that people who are using Braille can really benefit from so many people investing in them and their literacy. Sadly, only 10% of people who are blind and visually impaired are literate in Braille. This is a really staggering number because Braille is so useful when you actually know it and when you can actually utilize it. And there's several reasons why only 10% of people use it. It's mostly because there's not enough people who are teaching it or teaching their students or their children. They just don't have the resources to be able to learn it. And so it's not being taught as it should be. Another reason is maybe they just don't fully understand how it can be super useful as a tool. So my focus for this video is to chat with you and share some of the misconceptions that are out there about Braille and help you hopefully understand why we need to increase how much Braille we're using. Now, I'm not saying you have to go crazy and put Braille on everything. I'm just saying that just by adding a little bit here and there can really make a big impact for the people who are using it. There's a reason why by law you have to put Braille in some specific places, and I think a lot of people just stop there. They'll put it where it's required, but won't go above and beyond that to help people who are using Braille in so many other places that could really help them be more independent. But let's start with our first misconception. So some people think that Braille is obsolete because of technology. This is so not true. In fact, Braille pairs great with technology. In fact, you can even use technology to help you better learn Braille. And if people don't learn Braille, they're not learning spelling, they're not learning grammar, syntax. This is how people who are blind and visually impaired learn all these skills that we learn when we're reading and writing and looking at words and stuff. That's how they're doing it, is by learning with their hands. And if they don't know Braille, then their literacy levels might be lower, and that can be an issue when you're going out trying to get a job or do other things. A misconception of Braille is that people who are blind are the only people who are using Braille. And this is just not true. Sure, there are other type of disabilities or situations where people might find it useful to learn Braille. So there are people who have motor disabilities or cognitive disabilities that might be able to learn Braille easier than learning how to read and write. And they could benefit from using Braille even if they have full vision. A misconception about Braille that I want to clear up is that Braille is not considered a language. In fact, Braille is going to be different for every single language. So what I know is English Braille, but someone who speaks French is going to want to learn Braille that is specific for French. So French Braille. And there's going to be a different type of Braille for every language. So while it is kind of like a language, it is not a language. A misconception about Braille is that Braille is just for books, and books are huge when they're in Braille because it takes so much to type them out that they can just be really long. And Braille can be used really for anything. I think that there's so many uses for Braille that is underutilized. Yes, while books are great and that helps with literacy, you can also see Braille in existing places like elevators. You can see them on signage in buildings. You can make them yourself and put labels on anything that you would normally label with a print label. You can put Braille on it. You can put it on things like appliances like a stove or a microwave to help you know exactly what button is which. You can use the Braille to help you label really anything that you want. It could be for something temporary or more permanent. There really is no limit as to how Braille can be used. You just have to be creative about it, and then you'll find that you can be more independent if you're using Braille. And this goes for other people, like in the classroom, in businesses, in public spaces. Like, we can be putting Braille in different places. A misconception about Braille is that Braille is difficult to learn. And I personally totally disagree with this. Now, there's levels of Braille. We call them grades. So there's grade 1 Braille, and that's basically just learning up front the alphabet and some punctuation. And if you don't want to go beyond grade 1 Braille, you can stick with grade 1 Braille and do whatever you want with that. It might take a little bit longer because you spell everything out. But then there's grade 2 Braille, and this is contractions, so like TION or ING, or some words are just like one letter, that kind of thing where there's a combination that makes a long word short. But that's totally not necessary to learn grade 2 Braille unless you want to. And you can start with grade 1 Braille, get that nailed down, and then while you're working on grade 2 Braille, just use grade 1 Braille and then work yourself up to learning grade 2 Braille. It is suggested as a business owner, as someone who's a parent or a teacher, if you're questioning if you should use grade 1 Braille or grade 2 Braille on your signage or whatever you're using it on, the best rule of thumb is to always use grade 1 Braille because that's the basic one, and so more people are going to be able to access it if you use grade 1 Braille. A misconception of Braille is that it's kind of old-fashioned. Now, I can kind of see why someone would think that because, I mean, technology and everything's moving so fast. We're getting so many things, and they might be like, well, Braille was created because they couldn't do things other ways. Now they can use their phone or do it in these other different fancy ways that uses technology. While that is true, technology is so helpful to people who have low vision. But that still doesn't teach them the literacy that they need to learn, like being able to navigate around their own house or a business or that kind of thing. And while there are some technologies that help with that, and I mean, why not have another tool to add to that technology to really just make it so you have the skills you need to get around and to do what you need to do. Along those tracks, a misconception about Braille is that Braille makes it so that you can't really develop with the times of technology, and that's just not the fact. So there is technology that actually uses Braille. Specifically, there's a refresh Braille display, and this is a device. I'll show a picture here where it connects to your computer or your phone or tablet or whatever, and then it will take text that is on the screen from a website or whatever you want, and then it will convert it into Braille so that someone can fill it with their hands. And this is an alternative way for them to be able to consume information other than always relying on listening to things. This is super helpful to someone who's low vision and hard of hearing. There are people who are deaf and blind, so this is going to be a super helpful way for them to interact with technology and really just doing anything they want that you could do on a computer or a phone or whatever. Now, let's clear this up. Braille is not only just for reading. Yes, it seems like Braille is kind of focused on reading because we talk about learning it and learning how to read it. But in reality, Braille is also a tool to help people learn how to write and be able to communicate with people other than just speaking. A lot of people who have low vision have a difficult time writing. And so this way, if you learn Braille, you would have another way to be able to communicate with other people. There's a big misconception that Braille isn't relevant when it comes to the workplace. And this is just not true. In fact, Braille can be super helpful in the workplace. And like I mentioned, you could use a Braille refresh display to help convert Braille from one way or another. You also could use it just for labeling in your office or helping make sure that you keep things organized with people in your workspace. There's so many different ways that it could be helpful in your workplace, and thinking that you can't use it just because there's not going to be anyone else in your workspace using the Braille is kind of silly. Because even if you're the only one that uses it, you can really have more independence in that way. And you can use that as a skill and a accommodation that could really help you be able to do a wider range of jobs. All right, if you can't tell by now, I'm super passionate about the fact that people should be literate in Braille. And I think that it can help so many more people than it's helping at this point. I have a whole playlist of videos that you can use to learn Braille, so I'll leave that here for you to go watch next. I hope that you all have a fantastic week, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!